Hello and welcome to Driving Britain. We are just outside of Welshpool. Now the reason why most of you have clicked on this video is because of the title, cheap fuel. And we will get to it in just a couple of minutes. And before I kind of divert off, the way on how we can all get a lot cheaper fuel, and I'm not just on about petrol and diesel, I'm on about energy costs overall, is really simple. It's a lot easier for petrol and diesel, but we'll come to all of that. Right now, I've got no intention of this becoming a political channel, but when things are really stupid or outrageous, then they just need calling out because they're stupid and outrageous. And we have that with the war in Ukraine and Russia. Now, I'm not on about the war itself. I really don't know enough about the war to know what's what. You know, from a quick look, it kind of looks a little bit like us taking back the Falkland Islands. Yeah, obviously we're in the UK. But I don't know. I really don't. If you've got a comment about it, then add it to the comments. If you think it is like us taking back the Falkland Islands, then say why. If you don't, then say why. I'm going to be relying on your comments to know what's what, because I really don't know enough about it. The reason why I'm mentioning it is because of the media. Now, just yesterday I saw an advert come on. It was actually on YouTube, one of the news articles from one of the main networks advertised, and their news clip was on YouTube, and it was talking about innocent Ukrainians flee from bombed out city. It's the sort of thing that you'd expect to see in a war zone. But then the next article by the same network was spectacular blast as Russian soldiers killed while hiding in building. I thought, well, hang on a minute. Not only, I expect you to be taking sides because propaganda is a really big part of warfare, and the West seem to be allied against Russia. With the Ukraine against Russia. So you expect propaganda, but what they actually showed was half a dozen Russian soldiers running into an abandoned building from an overhead view. Looked like it was from a drone, pretty much like where you get on Modern Warfare 2 that's now out, something like that. They run in there and then you see a big bomb get dropped on it, huge ball of fire. And it is a spectacular blast. But it's also half a dozen people killed. Yeah, they're Russian soldiers, but they're still sons, fathers, brothers, uncles. It's still a dozen people just being, well, murdered. Okay, you cover it in a cloak of war, but still murder, isn't it? Yeah, they've still just been killed right in front of you on YouTube, and it's been promoted like some sort of spectacular blast. Now, if they wasn't making such a big deal of Ukrainians flee, war zone, so on, and then the opposite for Russia, if they wasn't making such a huge contrast, I don't suppose it would stand out quite as much. And it's not even the fact that they're taking sides or anything like that, because I don't know which side should be taken. I'm not sure who's right and wrong. I'm sure that everybody's got an opinion, and mine isn't worth anything because I don't know anything about it. But what I do know is that soldiers are soldiers. It doesn't matter which side you're fighting for, soldiers are soldiers. And glorifying half a dozen men being blown up in a building, it's just not right. You know, it was happening with the Afghan-Iraq wars, and it was probably, I don't know, 20% of the way towards what they're doing with Russia. So it was bad, but it wasn't, it wasn't really bad. They wasn't really doing it. They was just showing the stuff. They wasn't really saying much about it one way or the other. They was just showing it, but they're showing it in a way that was kind of, promoting it as a good thing. Which, if you're fighting another country and it's your side that's in some way winning, then I guess it is a good thing. But the way they're doing it now, it is just like you're playing a game of modern warfare, and you've just downed half a dozen enemy soldiers using your drone, and you've got to win. Well, these are real people. This isn't a game, and it shouldn't be shown as a game. It's just wrong on every level. I've got a military background, and I know as well as any other soldier from any other force in the world, you still have respect for the other side. You might want to kill them, you might want to win the war, but soldiers are soldiers. You know, it's just not right. Okay, enough about that. The reason why you really clicked on the video, although if you've got a view about the Ukraine, Russia and stuff in the media, make sure you put it in the comment section, because that's how we all get to learn, isn't it? We all speak to each other, pass information. Right, cheap fuel. For those of you who don't really know on why fuel's gone up so much, you think it's just because of the Russian war. It's not. The fuel was going up before that. Now, it started with COVID. All the fuel companies, the ones drilling, refining, supplying, which is pretty much the same network, just subsidiaries of the same companies a lot of the time, they all shut down pretty much half of all of their empire, I guess. The drilling halved, staff halved, refinery staff skeleton shift. Now that meant that they dropped in production. If they drop in production, then they drop in sales, because they don't have as much to sell. And say if they was earning, obviously they're earning billions, but say if they was earning £1,000 a week. Now they said, okay, we still want that £1,000. So what we're going to do, if we're only putting up half the amount of oil and selling half the amount of oil, fuel, then let's double the price. If we double the price and sell half the amount, we still end up with £1,000 at the end of the week. Of course, they're talking billions of pounds. Now, during COVID, they got away with it because only essential services were on the road, so it meant that people weren't really driving that much, just having to pay a lot more for fuel. But with what was going on, people just thought, well, I suppose it's expected. But then COVID stopped. It didn't stop, but we all got back to almost normal. And then the fuel prices started going up again. So, well, hang on, if we've gone back to normal, that means that your staff and everything should have gone back to normal. So why is the price going up? And it's pretty straightforward. They realised that actually people will pay whatever they ask for. People want the fuel regardless. They need petrol in the cars, they need diesel to run the infrastructure of your country. So no matter what they say you're going to pay us, we pay it. Now, they claimed that the reason why their prices were still going up is because China had returned back to normal. But what do they mean by that? Normal being pre-COVID. Well, pre-COVID, we had normal consumption, normal prices. So if they've returned back to normal consumption, then why haven't they returned back to normal prices? Were or are China using more fuel than before COVID? No, they're actually using a bit less. Still using a lot, but less than before. Because people, like in all of our countries, people haven't really got back to the swing of doing all the things that they was doing before the world stopped. So the fuel company's argument for why they put the fuel prices up and kept going up, they just didn't stand. But what it really came down to, and what it comes down to, is they realised that halving the staff and halving the amount that they was digging up and stuff like that meant that they was also paying out half the amount to run their company. And then on top they're charging pretty much double for the fuel. So they're halving their outlay for running the companies, and then they're doubling the amount that they're selling the product for. So they're getting 1.5 times kind of payback. Actually, they're doubling it plus half from the wages bill and the infrastructure and tools and so on. That's on top of what they would have been making already. And that's why the energy companies have, for the third quarter, fourth quarter running, announced record-breaking profits, literally in the billions. Now they've had to put a lot of the workers back to work and open up the refineries back to normal, because the fuel consumption's gone back to normal, so they've got to dig up just as much as what they did before. But the price that they're charging kept on going up, and they added more and more. In the UK it went up to pretty much £10 a gallon, because they got so comfortable with making so much money. When they had to start paying out for the wage bills again and costs of running the refineries and so on up to full capacity rather than half, they decided that they didn't like that. They liked making the extra money, so they pushed the price up even more, and that's why they then touched £10 a gallon in the UK. It's currently about 165, 170 a litre in the UK. You know, in the US you're paying that per gallon, aren't you? How can we make it so that they go back to what we were paying originally? Well, that's pretty simple actually. The reason why they charge the amount that they're charging is because there's demand. And what happens if that demand suddenly stops? I don't mean like COVID, where people still needed it because we still needed to run the countries. I mean just, instead of everybody wanting, say, £100 worth of fuel a week or a month, whatever you're using, they suddenly only want £70, which is going to mean that there's building up very quickly, building up an excess of fuel. Now that happened in the UK last year between the two lockdowns, when everybody had gone back to being allowed out for a while. The fuel prices suddenly started to drop, and then a weird story came out from the transport agency making out that there was going to be a fuel shortage, and then some nonsense story about the EU. It caused panic and caused everybody to go and quickly buy up every bit of fuel that they could get hold of. And it really turned out that fuel's got a bit of a sell-by date to it. They can't hold fuel for too long because it loses its octane, or whatever the reasons. They can't keep it for long. So they had a problem of having quite a lot of fuel and people weren't really buying it, because even though the lockdown had stopped, people weren't really going anywhere. They were just doing minor stuff. Nobody's really back to normal now after the countries have been open for quite a long time. So you imagine when it was just open, a week ago, people were doing nothing that was going to use up anywhere near the amount of fuel that was previously being consumed. So they worked out a pretty cheap, cheesy scam to encourage people to very quickly buy up all that fuel. The fuel prices then rectified. They got rid of the excess fuel, and they carried on happy as Larry, and we all ended up with a lot more fuel than we needed, because we'd all got more fuel. We all did a lot more miles. So you think, well, if you filled your car up, then it's full. It doesn't matter. You're not going to go back out and fill it up again because it's already full. So maybe during that month you're going to use the same amount of fuel, and it's not like that. It doesn't work that way. When you've got a lot of something, you tend to use it a lot more freely. And that's exactly what happened with the fuel. So people, they might not use it quite as quick as, just throwing it away sort of thing, but certainly a lot faster than filling up separate tanks worth on a normal pace that they would have done without the we're all going to run out of fuel scare. The fact that they did it and the way that it was done is really, really horrible and cheesy and nasty. But that's what the fuel companies are happy to do. Now, we're a driving channel, so you might think, well, you got a motive to have fuel prices pushed down, but we do a lot of miles making these videos, but otherwise generally we don't really do that many miles, so it doesn't affect us any more really than what it does any of you. But right now fuel prices are causing all of our countries to hit very, very big hard times, you know, recession sort of standards. And it all comes back down to fuel, because just as the fuel companies said, well, hang on a minute, we still want to make our £1,000 per week, so we're going to pull up our prices so that even though we're selling less fuel, we're still going to make £1,000. Well, companies producing food, yeah, they've got to get the stuff from the farmers are paying more fuel costs, transport costs, everything's costing more because of the fuel. So the companies producing food and all other products, they're saying, well, it's costing us more. We used to make £1,000 a month, but now we're having to pay out more because we're having to pay extra for this fuel. So we're going to put our prices up so that we're not having to make any losses. And then you've got the supermarkets or the outlets doing exactly the same. They're saying, well, hang on, they've charged us more. I'm not going to make a loss, so I'm going to charge more. And so they charge more themselves. And it all ends up being pushed along until it lands to you and me. We're the ones that have to foot the bill for the price increase. And that price increase traces all the way back to the fuel prices. If the fuel prices hadn't have gone up, none of the other prices could have gone up, because they wouldn't have had the excuse to do it. So driving fuel prices down isn't just about running your car, it's about your entire economy. And I don't just mean your personal economy, I mean your country's economy. Now, right now the pound's pretty weak against all of the currencies. Most of that's because of our useless politicians. But the actual cost of living in the UK has gone right up. House prices are going down, interest rates going up, all sorts of really bad stuff, and it's because of the knock-on effect of the fuel prices going up. And it's the same in all of your countries. So how can we stop it? Well, actually it's really easy, because they showed us exactly how to stop it in the UK last year between the lockdowns and unlocking, I guess you could say. They were making fuel at a very slow pace because they'd already dropped down to skeleton sort of shifts, charging double to make the extra money. People went back, but they still wasn't buying anywhere near as much as what they were starting to build up in excess. Now the production was already really low, so the excess wasn't building that fast, but because they can't hold the fuel, excess even at 1% is a massive problem for them. So you imagine if a whole country used 1% less petrol or diesel, that causes a really, really big problem for everybody in the network, from the digging it out of the ground to the petrol pump, everybody along the line, all the ones that's currently charging you astronomical prices for something that they're still digging up and producing at exactly the same price. Now, I think that the fuel companies need to be stopped for two reasons. One, they're driving our countries to bankruptcy. They're driving us to bankruptcy. And two, they intentionally push the price up, knowing that they could blackmail every one of us into paying more money during the middle of one of the biggest catastrophes that's ever hit the earth. We've got millions of people around the earth dying. We can't even get food or toilet rolls or whatever it is that your country was starved of. And the fuel company said, I know what we can do. We can have them over a barrel and charge them double, otherwise they're going to have nothing. They looked at ways to make the most amount of money possible out of you during your worst time. And I think that they deserve to be put back in their box just for that alone, let alone for destroying every one of our economies. So how do we do it? It's really straightforward. Use a little bit less fuel. Now, yeah, we talk about 1%, and 1% would make a big difference, but really what we're talking about is, if you say use, I don't know, £50 worth of petrol a week, which sounds like quite a lot, but say if you did, a good portion of that is probably extra journeys, extra days out and things like that. Now, during lockdown, we all learned that there's actually quite a lot of stuff around our own areas that we can do. Whereas in the UK, the policy was you was allowed out for exercise purposes only. So some people were driving off to the countryside to walk around, but mainly people were just going out of the house and doing stuff around their own area. And it was really, really good actually, really successful. People really enjoyed it. Now, people are like with camper vans and things like that, because fuel prices have gone a lot higher, instead of going away each week or each weekend, they're now going away, say, twice a month or once a month. Well, how about we do that with our day trips? Instead of going somewhere long distance or using up a bit more fuel than what we normally would have by going on a big roundabout journey, go somewhere a bit closer or do something that doesn't involve driving for just one of those occasions, or just drive a little bit nicer so that you use less fuel. Basically, just do whatever you can to use less fuel, and you've only got to do it for about a fortnight. Now, quite a lot of people go out for drives just for the sake of going out for a drive, just because it's good fun. If you do that, say, I don't know, 3 times a month, cut one of them out, do it twice a month. Now, you individually, that's not a lot of fuel, but collectively, that's a huge amount of fuel. And if all of us, everybody listening to this, not just the UK, but all of the countries around the world, we're being shown in at least 30 odd countries at the moment. If all of us do exactly the same, if all of us cut our fuel consumption, petrol, diesel consumption, as much as we can, but at least by 5%, say, don't think that's asking too much, but ideally about 20%. I'm not sure if that's realistic, depends what you need your car for. If all the journeys you do is for work, then there's not a lot you can do. Maybe just drive a bit nicer so that you use a bit less fuel. All of us doing this for a fortnight will cause an excess of fuel in all of the refineries and all of its outlets. When a company has too much of something, the only thing they can do to make sure that people buy it and buy it quickly is sell it cheap. They've got no choice. They can't hold the fuel, and they can't stop production either. It doesn't work like that. They can't just stop digging. The speed that they dig it up is fast enough to supply the world demand without very much excess. They only pretty much dig up as much as can be consumed, because they can't store it, not at those amounts. So if the world's usage goes down, even just, imagine 1% across the earth, or even just the 30 countries listening to this, if the fuel drops down by 1%, fuel consumption drops down by 1%, that would cause all of the fuel network to have to readjust. And that comes back down to the refineries. The people originally producing the fuel will have to drop the price, and everybody else along the line will also have to drop the price, because they'll be told to by the suppliers. Now you're wondering, is it realistic? If I actually did this, would it really make a difference? Well, that depends on how many people do it. If only you watch this video, then no, it's not going to make a difference. It's just going to be the pair of us trying our best to make a difference, and it doing absolutely nothing. But if you make sure that as many people as possible do the same, get them to watch the video so that they understand why they're doing it, whatever it takes, or just explain it to them, tell them where you've seen it, and it's more ideal if they watch the video. One, because we want them to watch the video, but also people are only more likely to do stuff if they actually understand the reasons for it. If you just say to somebody, I want you to use less fuel for the next fortnight, they're just going to say, oh yeah, that's fantastic, and then they're going to go out for a drive. So try and encourage at least one other person to watch the video, and explain to them why you want them to watch it. Now, if we all or at least a good portion of people, collectively use less fuel. Some are going to be able to use quite a lot less, others there's not really a lot you can do because you only use your car for essential journeys anyway. But collectively, you know, some using more than others, some saving more than others. It should even out as a saving overall, as long as enough of us do it. And that will then push the fuel companies to have too much fuel, which will push them to have to lower the cost. When the fuel costs get lowered, all of the other companies in the network, right the way to your food cupboard, can't use rising fuel costs as an excuse for their increased prices. Now when they can no longer use the excuse, then they're going to put the prices down. And let's face it, if things are more expensive, you're going to buy less of them anyway. So if a shop can reduce its prices and sell more goods and make more money overall, then they're going to do it. So it's not just the fuel that you're going to get cheaper, it's everything. You know, pushing the fuel prices down pushes everything down. I think the main thing that would determine whether it's a successful way forward to be able to push the prices down or not, all of your prices, all of your outgoings, is by everybody doing it and how many people do it. If you actually make the effort to get someone else to watch this video and that you get them to do the same, they make the effort to get somebody else to watch the video, and so that there's enough of us collectively using less fuel, then it will work. I can guarantee it will work because the fuel companies can't store the fuel. They have to use it. If they can't sell it, they're stuck. They can't just keep it. So if you want lower prices, you have to do a little bit of work. You have to use a bit less fuel and get somebody else to watch the video so that they use a bit less fuel. Now, that's not really a very big deal. Driving a little bit nicer so you use a bit less fuel, or just cutting out one of your journeys, or using a different method for that journey, like taking an easy stroll up to the shops a couple of times rather than using a car. Not only is it going to be a little bit nicer for you, as we all found out during lockdown, but it's overall going to help you financially. And we're talking about mortgages and everything, that all prices have gone up, and it's all back down to the fuel. Now this does also apply to your gas and electric, because it's the same story. Their prices went up in the same way and for the same reasons, or same claims rather than actual reasons a lot of the time. It's a lot more difficult. You know, the UK, we're heading into the winter, so it's a lot more difficult to use less gas or less electricity because we've got shorter days, longer nights. So you've got your lights on for longer, the house is cold, so you've got more heating on. So it is difficult to use less during the winter in places like the UK. But there are ways that you can still cut down the amount that you use. That wasn't great. We just dropped the mic and it went right down under the seat. That's what all the clunking noise was. Right, we're going to let you enjoy the drive for a little while and think about what we said about the fuel, and we'll touch back up on it in a little bit. So think about what we said, the reasons, over the next few minutes, and then I'll chat again in a couple of minutes. Don't know why I keep catching this microphone on, but I pulled it off again then. We are currently now heading towards Barmouth because we checked the weather as was going along and it's more sunny in Barmouth apparently, or due to be. The reason why I left you for a little while to think about what we've been talking about up to now is because I need it to make sense to you, because if it doesn't make sense you're just not going to do it. A lot of people do know that the refineries doubled their prices during lockdown, and yeah, way before the Ukraine war and all the rest of it. So I think that a lot of you know the reasons why the fuel prices went up in the first place, but I'm not sure that everybody realised why they were still going up, and I don't suppose you realised why all other prices have gone up. Yeah, you know that everybody's costs are going up, so everybody's raising their prices. But breaking it back down to realise that it all comes down to the fuel cost at the very beginning that caused a snowball effect throughout everything, and that's now having devastating effects on our economies. You know, I don't think a lot of people kind of break it down that much to think about it that far. And also what we're asking you to do by using less fuel. Now, I'm sure that you understand why the fuel prices have gone up. Yeah, we've covered it. And you know that we're asking you to use less, but whether you're kind of convinced that actually that will work or not, I'm not sure, because here in the UK we ended up with excess fuel, like I said earlier, between those two lockdown periods, and they put out the fake story about there's going to be a fuel shortage to quickly sell it all. It wasn't until about 2-3 months afterwards that it kind of become known from whistleblowers that it was just a scam to use up the excess fuel, because they'd got more than what they wanted. We wasn't buying quite as much as what they had anticipated us was to buy, anticipated we were going to buy. So in the UK we know that not using as much fuel, causing an excess in the supply chain, will drive down the price, because we're not going to fall for there's going to be a fuel shortage again, because we know it's just not true. They've already tried it once, and people are just not going to believe them anymore. Only so many times you can cry wolf before you get eaten. But I don't know how that translates to all of your other countries around the world, whether you've experienced similar things, or whether you've had a time when fuel prices have dropped right down because the companies have had more fuel than they expected, or whatever's brought it about, or whether you've been given a scare story to try and use up your excess fuel, and then you've found out afterwards it was all a lie just to make you buy more fuel. So we've actually kind of lived through it in the UK. We know it happens, we know the reasons that they do it, we've seen it and done it. But a lot of you around the world haven't, I don't suppose. And when it does happen to you, when you have these scare stories and you hear that you're going to run out of fuel, so everybody's got to go out and quickly bulk buy, which then does cause places to run out of fuel, reinforcing the kind of original story. But it's not because there's anything wrong with the supply chain, it's just because everybody's suddenly tried to buy a lot more. But it then kind of gives credibility to the original lie. And so because that happens, a lot of the time people don't realise or don't get to know that they've just been scammed. It's only through whistleblowers and stuff like that that we kind of find out the truth. There's a lot of clamps on social media in the UK. The government try very, very hard to control what we do and don't see, to what information we can and can't access. But a lot of the time, things like whistleblowers and stuff still get through, despite the government's best efforts. But I know that not all countries play quite as fair. So the chances of you being scammed by big organisations and your government doing the best because they're all taking backhanders or all involved, or just think it will cause disruption so they don't want the story to get out, for whatever reason, if they want to keep the story from you, I'm sure that they can. The other problem is, I think that people are going to be sceptical that them using less fuel is going to, even for just a fortnight, is going to actually make a difference. But that comes down to your effort level, I guess, because if you do make the effort to use less fuel for a little while, come on, Mr. Pheasant, you're going to end up a pint. Yeah, I think that these are probably eating the remains of the last pheasant that tried the same trick. I don't go that way. If you can fly, why do you waddle across the road to escape? I think it's dinner time for the pheasants. Yeah, people are going to be sceptical on whether just them alone or using less fuel is going to be enough. But if you make the effort by not just using less fuel yourself for a couple of weeks, but getting somebody else to see the video, getting somebody else to take part, that's your real challenge, and that's the way that you make this successful. That's the way that you not just make it so that you get lower fuel costs, but all of your costs go down, because like I say, it all comes down to fuel. If the company's producing all of the goods that we use, whether that's food or whatever, cosmetics, anything, they're all using increasing fuel costs and energy costs as the basis for their price hikes. Now, the most outrageous one that we've come across recently is in the Midlands, the M6 relief road. Most of the roads in the UK are just normal government roads. You pay your car tax and you can drive on them, that's it. But there are one or two toll roads, and the relief road is a toll road. Come on, don't go back again. It's like an arcade game, this. The toll road have added higher charges to the toll road, claiming it's because of COVID and rising fuel costs. So just as I'm driving down this road now, it's like the council turning around and saying, well, actually we're going to charge you a bit extra to drive down this road because of COVID and rising fuel costs. How does that affect this road? You know, they're not doing any road works on it. It's a fairly new road. What it really comes down to is less cars are travelling on it because prices for everything are higher. People have got less money, so paying an extra charge to drive on a road that's slightly quicker, they're just not doing it. Plus there's less people on the road. People aren't going out as much because the world's not really properly back to normal as it was before COVID. We got used to not going out all the time. The consortium that own the toll road decided that they didn't like making losses during COVID, so they bumped the prices up, and they've continued to bump the prices up using the very poor excuse of COVID. Now, there are quite a lot of other companies that put their prices up claiming that it was because of COVID, without actually explaining how COVID mysteriously made it so that their outgoings were going to be more when there wasn't really anything in the chain that was going to make it cost more. But when the fuel prices went up, it gave them a bit more credence because we all saw it was all feeling it. So they got away with still adding more. But you're being scammed in two separate ways, because one is the prices of goods are going up, but also the goods themselves are getting smaller. Now, I don't mean as in, oh, in my day chocolate bars used to be twice the size and all that sort of stuff, which they did, but that's not the point. Now, Curly Whirly used to be like the size of your arm, now it's more like the size of your little finger. It's that the actual product's being taken away from you and given a smaller amount without you realising it and without them really declaring it. And one example of this I saw the other day was a bottle of juice. It was a bottle of Tropicana. Now, I did pick up a bottle of Tropicana. What I thought was a litre, same price as normal, but it didn't feel quite right. And when I looked around it, I realised that it was now an 8.75 ml. So they took away a quarter of a litre. Now, there's nothing on the bottle that says that it's a quarter of a litre. Yeah, obviously it says the mil on the side, but I mean, nothing to say that you're getting less or that it's something new or anything like that. They've just very sneakily reduced the size of the carton, left everything else looking identical, kept the same price and gave you a quarter less. Yeah, that's quality street chocolates. I know that chocolate companies in the UK claim that they was reducing chocolate bar and chocolate sizes by 20% as a way to combat obesity, which is just absolute nonsense. You know, if you want chocolate, you're going to eat chocolate. If you don't have enough with one chocolate bar, then you're just going to buy two and eat two. If they're half the size, you buy two. You eat as much as you want to eat. It doesn't matter what form it comes in. It's just a way of charging people more money. Just a government-sponsored scam, wasn't it? But Quality Street, there's a lot less than 20% missing out of there. They're doing the Christmas boxes, you know, the big plastic tubs. Well, not big, the plastic tubs. They're a lot shallower. The contents is a lot less, and the size of the chocolates that are in there is also less. So between all of the factors, you're getting a lot less than 20% reduction on the chocolate, and the price has gone up. So they're charging you more money and giving you even less product than the reductions that they were already making. Yeah, they're just a couple of straightforward, easy examples that are popular things in the UK. Obviously, I don't know what's popular in your countries, but I'm sure that each of you can give me an example. So put in a comment section the example of the similar things that you've come across in your country, or if you're in the UK, a similar thing that you've also noticed in the UK. These companies are all going to continue to put their prices up and take goods off us whilst still charging the same price for as long as they've got excuses to be able to do it. Now, if we take away their excuses, then they have no choice but to start putting the prices back down. You think, well, you know, that really the government, they really control these things. If they wanted the fuel prices to go back down, surely they could make them go down. Well, yeah, they could. But instead what they've done, they've made it so that the fuel companies can make even more money. Now, I'm not suggesting that any other MPs or people within government and within these committees are MPs and also serving on committees for some of the fuel organisations, or that they're in any way making vast amounts of money through the back channels from these companies, because that would obviously be quite a big accusation. But what they have done is made it so that these companies can make even more money than they've made already at the worst time possible for us, even though our countries are hitting levels of recession. So yeah, our governments could make a difference if they wanted to, but they just don't have the motives. In fact, some might argue they have motives to do the exact opposite. Very fat pocket type motives. I'm not saying that that's actually the case, I'm saying that some people might argue that. But overall, if government could have its cake and eat it, then they would. So how are they going to have their cake and eat it? Well, easy. All the things that's going on that's making them help these companies make more money than they should be. If they could carry on doing all of the things that they appear to be doing, and also increase people's spending, then they will, because more we spend, more money goes into the country and better it is for the country. That's what brings you out of inflation, out of recession. When prices go up, people stop spending. When people stop spending, that's when the country starts getting into financial trouble. So if the fuel prices went down because we made it happen, rather than the government making it happen, then the government get to do all the things that they're doing already with the fuel companies, and they also get the country running in the right direction financially. So they get their cake and eat it. So the government would be very much on board with something like this, even though they might not overtly make out that they want it, because they couldn't overtly encourage something like this. They'll get too much pressure put on them from the fuel companies. Because the thing is, if the whole of the UK used 2 or 3% less fuel for a month, that would have a devastating effect on the fuel network. They would end up with so much excess fuel. So you do that for the countries around the world, it makes a really, really big difference. Alright, enough about that. I hope that you're enjoying the scenery, even though we've got quite a lot of cloud rolling in. We are going up and around Dennis Mouldy. Kind of running on the side of Snowdonia National Park. The temperature in the UK, despite being quite far towards winter, is still 13 degrees, so we're still doing quite well. Actually, yeah, I will say something else about the fuel. All of these stop oil people that keep on blocking up gantries and things like that, even you should be in support of this one. I think that it's a bit of a shame for these stop oil type groups, because the people involved really do genuinely believe that the earth is pretty much going to end because of what the human race is doing, because the world is suffering global warming. But the problem is the earth has gone through quite a few global warming and freezing phases before. We've got good strong scientific evidence showing the last 3 ice ages. Yeah, we've got core samples and all sorts showing what the air was doing, the temperatures, well yeah, within reason the temperatures, because we can infer it by other effects. So we can see all sorts that was going on. So we know without question that the earth has heated and cooled. Yeah, like proper rising temperatures and ice ages at least 3 times that we have actual strong scientific evidence for. I know that the old films show humans and dinosaurs coexisting, but they just don't. Dinosaurs are 65, 70 million years old. Humans, we're just not. We're measured closer in thousands than millions. I'm not going to say how old the humans are because it keeps on changing, so there's no point. And it's whether you agree that that ape, was it Sophie that they called it? I know whether the ape was the first human and so on. So I'm not sure that everyone is ever going to really agree on how old the human race is. Whenever you're watching this video, look it up, whatever amount of time it says at the time, then that's what we'll go with. But what I can tell you is that humans and dinosaurs, millions and millions and millions of years apart, no matter what estimate for the human race you get. So if we've had 3 sets of global warming, 3 sets of ice ages that we have scientific evidence for, so we know they definitely happen. We're not just, it's not like a black hole. We're saying, well, we think that we can detect it and we think it could be this. We can physically actually show that these things happened. So we weren't around for the last time the Earth did this. So it does make you wonder exactly how much contribution we are having towards global warming. I think that there is no doubt that all that's kind of meant by global warming is happening. I think that most people know that, because the sea levels are slightly changing, the climate is getting warmer, the seasons are changing. Yeah, we're all seeing different changes, but it's known that it has happened quite a few times before. It's a cycle that the Earth goes through. So if this has been happening without humans, then why is there suddenly an argument to say that humans are the ones causing it? Yeah, air quality and smog and stuff like that, we definitely influence that. We do cause that. And also during 9/11, when America had the planes fly into the Twin Towers and they grounded all airlines. In fact, most of the world kind of grounded all airlines. The temperature across the globe dropped by 2 degrees. 2 degrees because there were no aeroplanes in the air. So we definitely have an effect, but I wouldn't go as far as to say that we are causing global warming, because global warming would happen whether humans were here or not. Are we making it happen slightly quicker? Possibly. Hopefully you haven't just been given a load of dots on your screen by the car in front washing his window. But just in case you have, you're going to have your camera wiped over. There you go. I know that you've been dazzled by the sun quite a lot of the time, and we have got another lens, or quite a few other lenses that we can pull on to account for it, one of them being a normal polarized lens like your sunglasses. But the trouble is, because it is wintry, it means that the dark areas really are dark and that the bright areas really are bright. Now the camera will account for a lot of the bright areas, but it won't deal with very many dark areas. So if we put a tinted lens on, then there's a chance it's just going to struggle and make things a bit too dark for you. Yes, all these people that are part of the stop oil groups and stuff like that, they genuinely believe that the Earth is going to be destroyed, and it's because of what we're doing. If the Earth does get destroyed, the sea levels do flood all our countries and stuff, that's because that's what's going to happen anyway, with or without humans. But they've been groomed so much at school, because I don't know about around the world, but in the UK especially, the schools are very left-wing in their teaching nowadays. Yeah, I think fundamentally that's wrong, because I don't think that any type of opinions should be pushed on kids. I think that they should be given all of the facts and just left to make up their own minds and opinions. They shouldn't be pushed one direction or another by teachers or by anybody. They should be allowed to make up their own ideas. But because our schools are kind of pretty left-wing, then it means that ideas like the stop oil groups and stuff like that are a lot more likely to be, I'm not going to say promoted or encouraged, because they wouldn't be, but they're a lot more likely to occur than not because of it. You know, the left-wing views are more of a one world utopia, which just isn't realistic. The other thing is, we've just had another one of the global meetings with all the governments all flying in their private jets to say how bad we all are for using fuel. But if they really wanted to make a difference, one airline, one plane, holiday plane with 300 odd passengers flying an hour from the UK through to Spain consumes the same amount of fuel if the governments really wanted to stop the use of excessive use of fuels, if that's what's apparently causing global warming, or if they wanted to lower the overall temperature, then maybe stopping a few of the aeroplanes would make more difference than an entire country halving their journeys. A lot of it does seem to be a case of do as I say, not as I do with our governments and politicians. I'm sure that's not just a UK thing. Everybody is going exceptionally slow through here, way below 30, even though the limit is 30, because this is one of the main areas where the police set up their mobile cameras. So if you're going for a day trip to Barmouth, rewind for about 5 minutes and watch where we've just been driving, where you've got the false policeman on the left, where it's like a mannequin wearing a yellow coat to make you look like a policeman. The police are usually just round the corner from it. And also further down here there's a lay-by on the left on the next 30 limit section. They sit in there, and there's a car park on the right that they also sit in. This whole stretch between here and the seafront at Barmouth, where it says 30, you really need to make sure that you're not going over it, because the Welsh traffic police for handing out speed tickets are quite popular, quite well known. Now, I'm not saying you should ever speed anywhere, but if you are a person that tends to creep over the limit, this isn't the place to do it. If you've watched our video this far, then thank you. Even though we've just been droning on and whining about all sorts of things. So you're not going to make it into a political channel and spend an hour talking about politics. Wasn't the intention. But you will notice that we also now have a community tab on our main channel. I think it even shows up if you're looking on mobile apps through your phone and stuff. We've put a poll on there asking what types of videos from us you prefer to watch. We would really appreciate if you take a trip there and add your entry to the poll, please. When we know what types of videos you prefer, we can upload more like that. But also, the reason why we have that community part is because we are now becoming quite popular. It takes a huge amount to make a YouTube channel popular to get it off the ground. You're on about, you know, just thousands of hours and a long time. It's really, really hard work. But as you do start to progress, you do start to get watched by more countries and things like that, then you do start to get more help from YouTube, which then helps you grow. And one of those things is the community tab, which is one of the more kind of recent things that they've brought out. But what you'll notice is that we still don't have very many subscribers. Now, our watch hours are really high, and the amount of countries watching us is huge. But for some reason, we're not actually getting the subscribers. Most of our viewers aren't subscribers. So if you are watching this far, then please click the subscribe button, because it is really, really holding us back. We're becoming really popular and we've been watched in a lot of other countries and all that sort of stuff. But when you don't have the actual subscribers, then it stops videos being brought up on the main pages. So yeah, we're growing because of word of mouth and not because YouTube are advertising us as a popular channel, which means that we are growing, but it makes it really hard work and slow to grow. The way that we can help stop that happening is by gaining the subscribers. So if you haven't already subscribed, we would really, really appreciate it. I know that everybody says, oh, please subscribe, thumbs up and so on, but it really does make a difference. It makes a huge difference, because you can tell that we're getting the viewers and that we've got the watch hours. Yeah, there wouldn't be so much on the site. We wouldn't have so much content or so many countries watching. Yeah, it's really hard to break into other countries because YouTube don't advertise you in other countries. It's only through word of mouth, easy for you to say, word of mouth, and just by people typing in specific key terms that will bring up your video in another country. But as videos become popular in any country, then YouTube will start to advertise it more in that country. But the way that YouTube detect what's popular isn't just the watch hours, it's also the subscriber amount. And so now we're getting some help from YouTube because we've got the watch hours and the viewer amount and content and stuff, but because we haven't got these subscribers, we're still being held back really far. So we could really do with your help with that, please. And after all, from your side, all it really takes is just clicking that button. For you, it really makes no difference. It's a really easy thing to do. But for us, it makes an absolute huge difference. I mean, like a world of difference. Especially on this video, because we all want to help our economies, don't we? We all want to reduce our outgoings. We all want to get cheaper fuel, cheaper food, cheaper everything. We want our economies to be strong again. When I've had something to moan about, like the toll road adding an extra couple of pound on the price for using it, claiming COVID, things like that, a lot of the time I do end up starting off saying I'm not intending to make this a political channel, but because that's not what we're trying to do. We don't very often mention political things. Usually it's just general chit chat or talking about the places that we're going or where we are. It's only when there's certain things that come up. But when I've said that and we've gone through it, we've had quite a few people then adding comments and stuff saying, well, actually we much prefer that, we want you to do that. I think, well, you can't win really. Try to stay away from politics, because it doesn't matter what your view is, you're never going to get everybody to agree with you. You're only ever going to appeal to, yeah, perhaps half the amount of people listening. So you want to make an entertainment video, you're best off to stay out of politics, because otherwise you're going to start alienating part of your viewers, your viewership. So we try not to do it, but at the same time we then get messages from you saying, actually, we really want you to do that, we prefer that. So add to the comment section what you think. Let's see if we can get a balanced comment set, the for and against, but also why. Now we are starting to lose the light a little bit. You can see car lights coming on and things like that. Our lights have come on. The one camera that we've got running outside, or one of the cameras outside, is one of the ones that we tend to take the footage from most often, and it's a GoPro 10. Now we do use a range of cameras. We've got some inside the car filming and some outside. But the GoPro 10 generally tends to be a fairly good all-rounder, as long as it doesn't shut off through overheating. The trouble is, they don't like darkness, which is why I didn't put the polarizing lens on, because when we're going through here it would really struggle, and I think that it would end up making half of the video too dark. A couple of bits might be too bright as it is, but a couple of bits too bright is better than quite a lot quite too dark. But it means that right now on this section with the bright lights and then the dark parts, I'm not sure how good image you're getting. We are filming in 4K and we're currently filming at 30 frames a second. We do film at 40 frames, 60 frames a second a lot of the time. But because of the length of the video, to try and get the upload in one, then we've reduced it. It's quite a nice view, isn't it? As long as the camera's picking it up for you. Yeah, if an hour-long video in 4K 60 frames has an upload of pretty close to 130 gigabytes to upload it to YouTube when we convert it. It doesn't cost you that to watch it. It's just normal YouTube video amounts when you watch it, because YouTube do a little bit of magic. I don't know about you not being able to see, we can't see either. The maximum upload for YouTube is about 130 gigabytes, so it means that if we put on 60 frames, it would mean we could only upload about an hour of video, and this is obviously longer than an hour. I'm not sure how long it is because I haven't been keeping an eye on the time, but I'm guessing we probably exceeded an hour. Looks like the tide is in, quite far in as well actually. I don't know whether it's on its way in or on its way out, forgot to check. This is Barmouth. Although for this video we will be listing its name under the area name, because a lot of the time we just list Barmouth, but as an appreciation for the area, which we do spend quite a lot of time in, then we'll list it properly. not just is it winter, but it's also getting towards Christmas as well. So I wasn't sure if there might be any Christmas lights out yet, but apparently not. But there are quite a lot of bikers because this is one of the few weekends where there's been nice weather. Well, mostly nice. The tide's on its way out. It's only been going out for about an hour by the looks of it, maybe not even that long. The sea does come up quite far at Barmouth, but it also goes out really far. Not like Weston-super-Mare far, but Weston-super-Mare, if the tide's out and you're standing on a promenade looking out to sea, you'll be lucky to see the sea. And you wouldn't want to really walk all the way out to the sea because the tide comes in at Barmouth. Weston a little bit quicker than walking pace, but it also comes in underneath the beach first, which means that you get a little bit of kind of liquefaction going on, or you'll be sinking in the sand rather. Quicksand. Yeah, there's been quite a few people that get stuck on the beaches around the south coast of the UK because the tide comes in quite quick. It doesn't always come in like a uniform way. Sometimes it'll come around the back of you when you're facing the sea sort of thing and cut you off. Other times it comes up through the sand and makes it so that it's just too kind of boggy to be able to walk through. And people don't die by falling down, like being consumed by quicksand. That's not how quicksand works. What it does is stick you to the spot so that you can't escape, and then the tide comes in and kills you through either drowning or exposure, which is a bit harsh. The reason why we left it a little bit late before coming here is because we wanted to make sure we was here for sunset to try and film the sunset, and hopefully we're going to succeed. And there you have the sea at Barmouth. Now we are going to swap the lenses over in a minute to try and give you a little bit better view, because I guess it's going to be a bit too bright, but we've got to dismantle everything to do that, so we'll see you in a minute. Okay, we've added a tinted polarized lens onto the camera to try and help you out, but at the same time I'm not sure it's going to make that much difference. What we are going to do is set the camera up on the sea wall to try and film the sunset. We're going to wait for the sun to get a bit lower first, but if you want to see that, then click on the link to our website, the YouTube main homepage, and you should see the video uploaded on there. Please do subscribe, and if you like the video, click the thumbs up. I know that everybody says it, but it really does make a difference, and especially for us, because YouTube are pretty much actively holding us back at the moment, so we really do need your help. As for fuel, you know what you need to do. You know how you can make a big difference to your life and everybody else's life in your country, and also make your entire country's economy stronger, because when people have got more money, they spend more money, which is what drags each country out of recession, and all of our countries are currently heading towards recession. So you're helping more than yourself, but on a more selfish kind of point of view, you're also going to save yourself a lot of money every single month on fuel and everything else that you buy that comes back to fuel, food, goods, everything. Okay, thank you for watching the video. I hope you've enjoyed it. Please remember to leave a comment and click on the community tab on our main channel to have a look at the options and click which video you like watching the most. Whichever one comes out popular, that's the one that we'll make more of. Okay, thank you and bye.